Let's go ahead and get started. I'll ask Terry Denniston to call roll.
Craig DeCosimo,
Here.
Carol Hoffman,
Here.
Serena Desai,
Here.
Scott Leroy,
Here.
Jawan Lewis,
Here.
Gretchen Potts.
Here.
I want to welcome our attendees. As Dr. Angle was saying, we moved this out of the Tennessee room. We were kind of dwarfed in the cavernous room. I have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 7th meeting.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, 2 corrections. On page 6, in the first full paragraph, there's just a article missing in front of Yusuf's name. There should be 20 T0, whatever, I got it right. But the big change is actually much further down to where we talk about the student selection process. I spoke about this with JJ just to confirm it, and I believe we said, it's at the top of page 8. It says, I move for adoption of proposal 2 with the modification that at least 3 board members, including the student board member, will attend the SGA meeting. And JJ thought that was what I had said as well. Did anybody else remember that from the meeting? I remember the conversation was, we said, oh, if the student's there, we would only need 2 more members.
That's
And
what I
that,
remember.
right, this says 3 plus the student board member, and that's not what I said, so
Yeah,
that's
2.
actually different. So, that needs to be fixed.
Okay, with that modification, can I have a vote to accept? All in favor? Any opposed? Let's see. My God. Okay, our future meeting dates. As of now, we have May the 14th, and that meeting will be convened at 1, go to 3, and October the 3rd, 9 to 11. It's a change earlier. Do we need a motion on that? Or? Okay, we do not. Okay, now, we have to select a student member to the board. We have 3 applicants. I have to say, it is an impressive group academically in terms of what they've been involved in. And this will be for a term ending June 30th, 20, is that correct? Okay, I would, as I said, it was 3 excellent applicants. Several of you heard them. I would like to make a motion to nominate Benjamin Smith.
I second
Can we have any discussion?
I was impressed with, all of that. He was involved in campus. He's a junior this year. So I think he has the experience and the relationships that built on campus. And I think that would help to further some of the discussions with students as well as faculty. And he presented himself very well in the meeting.
Any other comments? Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
We had a second.
Okay.
That was Serena.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
So Benjamin Smith will serve the term as a student representative through the next fiscal, our next fiscal year. JJ, thank you for your brief term.
This was another meeting.
I think I have one more meeting, try to keep me out here.
I appreciate it. You will be able to go on your permanent record.
Yes, sir.
You were the very first student member of the advisory group. And you also lowered the average age considerably. Where's Dr. Brown? Oh, there you go. Sorry, Richard. Can we have a budget overview, please?
Yes, good morning to you. Welcome to the campus. I want to give you a quick financial picture of the university, the current budget, and telling you how we build this budget, and to just give you a pretty good picture of what UTC's financial profile looks like. Let me start also by introducing Tyler Forrest, my right hand, left hand, and both hands sometimes, is our chief budget officer here for today. So I would like to tell you that the state does require public universities to have a balanced budget, and I will tell you that our budget is balanced. That simply means that you're not spending more than you're taking in, and that there is some reserves in this budget. And so you will find that here. Some terms I want you to become familiar with. For some of you who are not familiar with higher education budget and financial planning, you'll hear me use terms called E&G, which means education and general funds. Generally, those are state funds that are controlled by the state. You'll hear me talk about restricted funds. Particularly those are grants, contracts, and scholarship funds, those kinds of funds that come through the UC Foundation at the end of the day. And then you'll hear me talk about state appropriation and tuition and fees, one of the largest revenue producers of the university. Well, what is budgeting in particular? Well, a budget really does state what's important for that institution. How you set your budget sends a strong message about how you're investing in the core processes of the institution. So when you look at these numbers, you're going to pretty quickly see we think very highly of academics here. And you'll see a strong investment in that particular area. Budgets also set the priorities for the institution in terms of where the institution is going. So that's what I want to do for you today. Challenges and opportunities for those of you who are serving on the advisory board. These are some of the things you will hear during your tenure of service on this board that all of higher education is dealing with. You heard some in our meeting with the legislature this morning. Tuition benchmarking. How do you stay competitive with tuition and fees? Everything's new in Tennessee with regards to higher education. There's a new board of trustees. The TBR has kind of been disaggregated. Now you've got something called LGIs, or locally governed institutions, which means that the higher education industry in the state is very competitive. Every public four-year university is looking for a way to grow enrollment or control their costs, and they're also looking for a value proposition. How do you stay competitive in the state? We're getting ready for SAC's reaffirmation of accreditation. You'll hear us talking a lot about that. Efficiency and effectiveness reporting, which, yes?
Maybe what is SACS? Just
SACS is the accreditation body for the Southern District, and UTC is a part of that. It's every 10 years they come in and look at the total university, and they have metrics and benchmarks that they measure you by. If you don't pass that test, you may as well close. That's how important it is. It is critically important. So you'll hear us talking about SACS as we move forward. There's a new requirement for a cost of attendance disclosure that we're dealing with, meaning that every potential student has to be told in advance what's your cost to attend UTC. The challenge with that is that the way we do tuition, the lateness of that is very difficult to propose and project that. So we need to be talking about how do we align how we determine tuition and fees earlier in the process. Enrollment growth, and Yancey is here. Everything hinges on enrollment growth. We hope to stay steady. That makes the budget balanced, but we'd like to grow some too because it brings new revenue opportunities. Scholarships and market competitiveness, you would think we're a business. Well, we are, at the end of the day, one has to be very competitive in this market. Scholarships drive that, and every year you'll see us reinvesting and rebalancing scholarships, making sure that we're competitive, we can attract the best and the brightest students. Compensation focus, you'll see this in the budget. At the end of the day, we spend probably 75 to 80% of all revenue at the institution with people. We're human capital driven, which means we hire a lot of faculty to teach a lot of students. But we invest a lot of our funds in people here. Instructional technology, big, these ERP systems that drive the university, learning management systems. You'll hear us talk about that in the budget. Staffing to meet the growth pattern of the university as we grow to potentially 15,000 students. How many faculty and staff will we need to accommodate that particular growth? And of course, philanthropy is going to be big in all of public higher education. As state appropriations continue to decline, we're going to depend more and more on philanthropy to help balance the university budget. I predict in the next 5 years, philanthropy will account for 25% of the base budget of any public university. If you go up north, it's much more, by the way. And of course, I want to talk a little bit about athletic facilities. We're working in a state where the state will not provide ENG dollars for any athletic facility support. So it's really a challenge when I try to renovate McKenzie Arena or provide new opportunities for a practice facility for a football program. Athletics is extremely important at the university, but the state's not providing much support for that, so it challenges the budget. The budget highlights for this year, this base budget, very quickly. We had great participation in what we call a transparent process. When the accrediting body comes in, they want to make sure that people understand the budget, that you have all the deans and all the vice chancellors participating in an open and transparent process. We had that last year in this budget. We had requests that came in that exceeded $16 million, and of course, we would have loved to have funded all of that. We can never aggregate that much new revenue to accommodate all those requests. Our actual revenue was about $6 million. We had $3.9 million from CCTA. You've heard us talk about the funding formula. Our campus has been the #1 performing institution under Complete College for 4 years. It generated almost $4 million for us. So when you do well, it pays off. If you're not competitive though, in any year you can lose $1 million or $2 million. So it's a zero-sum game. They do not enlarge the pie. If you don't do well, they just send your chair to someone else. So, yes.
Just want to ask a question, are you going to take them later? Or
You can go now.
I know we've been the #1. This year will be #3. It's tough to maintain that and keep improving at the rate, just the law of diminishing returns. What will coming in #3 cost us, or
Aggregately, it's right at about $700,000. $400,000 of it is really state support for the library, right? When you take a major building offline, the state will no longer send you operating dollars for that building. I argued till I was blue in the face. I said, I still have lights on over there. Sorry, Richard, that don't work. We treat every university the same way. Then we lost a little bit of money with some graduate programs and that kind of thing, but still we're #3. We still are very competitive in graduation numbers and baccalaureate degree production, so we probably still lead the state in that.
thank you.
1.5 million from enrollment growth. When the enrollment grows, there's money we can flow back into the operating budget. The main areas of focus for this year's budget was academics and the core mission of teaching at the university. You saw us put a lot of money back into academics and of course research, public service, and the safety of the campus, right? With the national conversations about safety, we had to make sure that we revisited that here at the UTC campus as well. We had some compensation investment in 19 in this current budget. It costs about $1.6 million for a 2%, what we call the CPI market adjustment. We're just trying to keep salaries competitive. One of the biggest financial risks for our campus and the entire University of Tennessee is really that we have probably 38% of faculty and staff who could retire today. Succession planning is a big deal. So we're trying to make sure that we keep our compensation competitive so we don't lose people. We had $400,000 and a 0.5% merit pool, trying to really acknowledge those people who perform very well. And really, we have $250,000 for faculty promotion and UC Foundation rollovers. We'll talk a little bit about the UC Foundation a little bit later, but we have professorships that come through the UC Foundation that we permanentize that salary in the out year when a professor gets those. We've been doing this $250,000 for faculty promotions for 10 years. And when you look at the competitiveness of our faculty, we are very competitive, because every time you're promoted in rank from assistant to associate to full professor, you get an automatic 10% increase in base compensation. Pretty good stuff. Let's take a look at revenue. There are 3 or 4 ways you can get revenue into a budget if you're a state public university. One is, of course, tuition and fees, which is the largest category that we get here at UTC. We're dealing with a E&G budget, a state budget of about $192 million, $553,000. Of that 192, 698,000 comes, 112 million, I'm sorry, 698,000, 59% of that budget comes from tuition and fees. State appropriation comes in at about 29% at $55.4 million. We'd love to have state appropriations continue to go up, but when you look at the states around us, and if you go up north, state appropriation has declined to 10% in some of those states. So I complain and whine a lot about that 29, but not for long, because we're grateful to get it. At the end of the day, Tennessee is still doing very well with public higher education compared to our peer sets.
Richard, what was, 10 years ago, what percentage was state appropriations?
If you roll back 20 years, that's a good metric right there, to roll back to that point. It was an inverse relationship. Tuition and fees would have been 30%. The state would have been almost 60 to 70.
Okay.
And I've got a graphic to show you that. There's been the decline, right? Of course, auxiliary enterprises, these are things like bookstores and food services and graphic centers that we run on the campus. We have things like Barnes & Noble, Aramark Food Service, Canon Supplies at the, for copying, runs at about 10%, another $18 million. Other small sources, grants and contracts, and sales and services about 4.8 million, which round out that revenue picture. How do we spend the money though? Now, if you get this revenue in, let's take a look at how we expense that out in 19. Well, again, your budget reflects where your core values are. Take a look at where we spent the money. 39% of that money was spent with instruction, almost $80 million. This is for faculty who are on the ground helping students progress through and get those courses that JJ was talking about that they need to get through. 39% of that money. You come again on research, about 3.1 million. Public service at $2.6 million. And again, academic support. These are all the support systems that support academic affairs at 9%, about $17 million, well in excess of 51% of the total revenue that comes into the university goes to the academic enterprise. This is very, very competitive for a public university. You can see ranges from 30 all the way up to 50. We're investing very well. The provost is here, he's nodding at the end of the day in the right things. Spending back out about 9% of that on auxiliary enterprise, scholarships, which is huge, and I know Yancey's sitting there saying, give me more, but about 7%, about $13 million we put back into the scholarship program here. Operation and maintenance of the physical plant, 10%, about $20 million. You might say, why is that important? Well, we know that from the research and the data, students choose to attend the university. They're on first look from parents and students by the way the institution looks and feels. So we spend a lot of time taking a lot of pride in what this campus looks like at the end of the day. And you see I've got construction fences everywhere. Institutional support, 16.5 million. Student support services, 26.3 million. Now, Yancey, don't salivate. That's not all Yancey's money. Athletics is included in that taxonomy, for budget purposes at the end of the day. So the athletic revenue is right there as well. So when you look at, revise another look at this budget at the end of the day, of the expense totals, let's look at salaries again. Almost $90 million of institutional funds, of that 192, is spent on salaries. 17%, another 32 million, is spent on benefits. So again, human capital driven. Human capital driven. This is very, very important to understand that. And operating, another $67 million at about 35%. And again, transfer funds to pay for auxiliary enterprises, about 2%. We have something called restricted funds. Remember I talked to you about that, those glossary of terms. Restricted funds, grants and contracts and other sources. State appropriation grant comes in, another $52 million comes into the university budget on restricted income flow. Restricted income, grants and contracts, creates about $45.9 million, or 87%. Other sources of about 6.1 million, and again, some small state appropriation restricted flows from the state, meaning that you've got to spend that money the way the state sends it to you. They designate that. Again, another $52.8 million. Here's how we really expense those funds out. Those dollars that come in, those restricted dollars, $40.4 million scholarships again. You're going to see why that's important when we start looking at net cost of tuition. How much does it really cost for a student to attend UT Chattanooga? You're going to see us put a lot of money back into support of student attendance here for this university. Some of the funds goes into operation and maintenance of the plant, a small percent there, institutional support, about $200,000, student support services, $2 million, academic support, $2.4 million. Public service, about another $1 million. Research gets about $2.6 million. And again, instruction picks up almost $4 million of restricted funds for instruction here. Any questions about that so far? I'm going very quickly, and I'm watching eyes, so everybody seems to be okay. You've been sent this slide deck, though, so you've seen the numbers. So, but if there's a question, raise your hands. Talk a little bit about formula funding. You hear a lot about that. You are serving on the advisory committee. We will talk to you about this every time you see a presentation from us, because it is the new paradigm in Tennessee in terms of how you fund public education in Tennessee. Prior to 2010, the state's higher education funding was based on enrollment. Every public university was trying to grow. You saw exponential growth at MTSU. They grew from about 15,000 to almost 30,000 students. It was really, I call it the student arms race. Everybody was trying to grow students. We weren't paying attention to quality at all. You were not hearing things about progression and graduation rates. So the state legislature said, well, what have you done for us lately in terms of really graduating students that are ready for the workforce in Tennessee? So Drive to 55 comes up, and suddenly THAC changes the entire funding formula for higher education. In 2010, they brought out the Complete College Tennessee Act, which mandated this new funding formula. I had the privilege of actually serving on crafting this new act and understanding it. We started here at UTC when we first implemented CCTA. We were at the bottom of the pack, folks. I mean, really, we lost $1 million the first time we ran the numbers at the end of the day. So we knew we had to change the culture of the university to say to faculty, Mr. Provost in particular, you have a real hand in making sure students like Juwan can graduate in 4 years. Because if you don't, you're going to lose money for it in terms of these funding metrics. So they had a formula committee, and this formula was created based upon core outcomes. Every campus had the opportunity to choose their own competitive outcomes. We did at UTC. We chose progression, and we chose baccalaureate degree production as the main outcomes for this campus. But here are the outcomes: retention, number of degrees awarded, and we pretty much blow people out of the ballpark with numbers of degrees awarded. research and service, degrees per 100 FTE, and 6-year graduation rate. You saw the chancellor say this morning, we've really been focusing on the graduation rate. And that's just why, because it does drive the formula metrics. Here's another look at tuition and fees. You asked the question, what was the relationship, Mr. Cosimo, 20 years ago? When you go back to 2001, back here in 05 and 06 and 07, state appropriations and student expenses in terms of tuition and fees collided. We were about 50-50. But if you look at from 2008 on, here's this huge gap in terms of saying this is the amount of money we really needed to really be competitive. And you can see the gap continues to grow. Therefore, you see us do things like 15 and 4 to get additional revenues in to make sure we can graduate students on time. It has created a revenue shortage across the state, and particularly for our university. Now, the other part of that is that we're in a state where everyone wants to keep tuition very, very low. In fact, last year, UTC got 0 tuition, 0. We also had cost of living increases, but we were not able to raise tuition at all. In the prior 3 or 4 years, tuition has hovered around 1 to 3%. It did not even outpace inflation, what we were doing. So we understand access, but we also understand quality. And one has to have resources to produce quality. Current mandatory fees, you saw some of this earlier today in terms of where we are right now, undergraduate, $8,664. Here's the big number right here, out-of-state tuition, $24,782. Every state around us have begun the process of discounting out-of-state tuition because we're all competing for students. We cannot continue to be competitive if we keep that number at that level. So we're moving forward a proposal to reduce that number 50% going forward. You'll see that going to our board here in June, the end of the day. Graduate domestic, 10,020. Out of state, we've already reduced that some at 18,000, and graduate international at about $26,000. So tuition benchmarking is really a moving target. It's very fluid. And all of these LGIs now, bear in mind, Mr. Cosimo, every public university now is doing the same thing that UTC is doing. Always trying to benchmark where we are with tuition to make sure we can have access. Our undergraduate market position right now, Chancellor showed you this early on. Right now, currently UTC sits here at about $8,664. Very low tuition at the end, but bear in mind, we did not have a tuition increase last year at all. And generally, our tuition has been historically right above Martin. That's where we've been in the last 10 to 15 years. We have never had Martin outpace us in tuition, and we're a different kind of university. I know we're being recorded, I'm not saying for Keith Carver. Keith, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with Martin, but UTC is a higher quality institution. Keith will get me for that.
Yeah.
UT system historical tuition changes. Let's take a look at a broad look from 2008 all the way up to 2018, a 10-year kind of look. A 1-year change at UTC, tuition only 1.4%, the 5-year change about 20%, the 10-year change about 71%, and again, that reflects reduced state appropriation, where you had to balance that budget inversely with tuition and fees. But when you look at us as a system, UTC, UTK, and UT Martin, we're still the lowest of all the schools within the UT system. So there is some elasticity there that we need to be able to raise our tuition a bit. Here's another way of kind of looking at that from a bar graph look. In-state tuition, we've had very, very little growth since 2015, you see. Not a lot of growth there, 8,138, about a $500 difference when you look at this since 15. And of course, the out-of-state is glaring now. That is far too much with out-of-state tuition. And graduate tuition and fees, very clearly, very competitive in terms of a public university. We're standing right now at $10,020. We did reduce this $26,000 to $18,000 last year, and we're right now recruiting those graduate students, trying to hit the break-even point to where we can make that financially feasible right now.
Excuse me, how many of our students are international students, and what's the undergraduate international students?
It's
And
about 2.5% of our students are undergraduate international students so far. We hope to get to 5-7%.
And what is the tuition rate for international?
Dr. Brown had it listed up there. When you go back, it is the out-of-state tuition amount. It's the
Oh, it's-
24,782.
24, yeah. It's about 26, really.
So 0% tuition increase, what was the logic behind that?
Okay. Steve,
It was
It was
mandated by
mandated.
the Board of Trustees, Vice Chair, and by the UT President. They wanted, they felt that Knoxville's tuition was high enough, which it was, and they wanted us to go along. Martin increased their tuition 3%. I, was very vocal that we ought to increase tuition 2.5%. That's what we wanted last
Yes.
year. And we were not approved to do that.
Not you requested the 2.5%. Average net price of tuition. Here's a good graphic to take a look at. Really, how competitive are we as a public university? The national discourse is that it takes students far too long to matriculate and graduate, and it costs far too much at the end of the day. So we're leaving students with this heavy debt load. Well, not here at a public university in Tennessee, more particularly at UT Chattanooga. When you look at average net price of tuition, it's done in quartiles. The average family income for a certain quartile of families in the state. The bottom quartile, $0 to $40,000. When you look at, after we have implemented financial aid programs, scholarships, other support services, look at the value we really deliver for students engaging in public education in Tennessee. This is outstanding. This is a number that we don't tout often. I'd love to see us kind of showcase this a lot more, because if you're in the $40,000 total family income range, we're generally giving back almost $4,700 to the student. In fact, before we disseminate financial aid, I get calls from Walmart and all the big stores saying, let us know when we want to stock our shelves. We're a huge economic driver for this particular area, and this is one indicator of it here. Even if you're in the second quartile, $40,000 to $84,000 of annual family income, net price of tuition after all of these deducts and excess financial aid, $1,347. Here's the real touch point, is right here. And Yancey would say that automatically. These are the families who are in the middle class, right? They don't meet the criteria for that bottom quartile, and they really don't make as much money as the fourth quartile. The squeeze comes there, and we have to find many more scholarship and other support programs for that third quartile number. The President's UT Promise program fits within this second quartile. He is trying to get more families that earn an aggregate of $50,000 or less with some additional financial support, which is a good thing, by the way. Access, public universities ought to be about access.
Dr. Brown, does the bottom quartile, is that the impact of Pell Grants and?
Absolutely.
Okay, as you move up, it's got everything's
It's got it, yeah.
incorporated into that, okay.
Got it all in there. Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about institutional compensation investment. Again, I told you we're human capital driven. It matters, the quality of faculty and staff that we hire here at the university. So one has to pay particular attention to compensation. We have a huge compensation study for faculty and staff now being generated by the system using an outside consultant group called Simpson Consulting. We're going to look at our competitiveness among our peers for the faculty by discipline, as well as faculty and staff. But I wanted to let you know we've done very well in terms of compensation investment here at UTC since 2013 to 2019. We put a total of $14.2 million in the compensation to keep salaries competitive here. 45% of that has been across the board, $6.4 million, just trying to make sure that the dollar we give you is a competitive dollar. What we would consider a CPI adjustment, our COLA adjustment. We've also had merit increases of about 43% at $6,179,000, trying to identify those people who perform well at the highest levels and compensate them. Yes, Carol?
So what's the criteria for merit?
It's a certain score that one has on their performance, their EDE performance, right? And it has to be at the distinguished or exceptional level.
And who does those performance evaluations?
Well, they generally happen at the department level. They flow up to a dean, into a vice chancellor, and ultimately are reviewed by human resources. Is that okay? All right.
Maybe how much is funded from the state? Like this year, there's a 2% increase, but the state.
They'll give us about 60% of that. They'll claim credit for the whole 100%, but we'll have to find the other 40% to make the numbers work. And generally, we get that from tuition and fees. So we have to have a little tuition money to even pay the compensation plan. It's a big deal. Here's a good indicator of financial health. The state requires every public university to have something called a fund balance. This would be your emergency fund if you were having your own money at home. This is the institutional emergency fund. I always tell Tyler when I first got an offer to do the job here as a chief business officer, I didn't want it. I said, this thing had only $600,000 in it. I said, oh my goodness, at the end of the day. Now you can see we're very healthy now, in excess of almost $7 million in the emergency fund right now. The balance represents about 4.1% of unallocated expenditures and transfers. THEC requires you to keep about 3% in that fund. So we've got a little bit of flexibility in there in case the chancellor wanted to do something or in case we had a real budget hiccup in one area. We've got a little bit of flexibility there. Notes and bonds payable, are we leveraged as a university? Do we have enough money coming in to pay for the capital debt that we're in? The answer to that is yes. In every category you can see from 2014 all the way up to 2018, we've got about $97 million in capital debt out there. Those are projects like, and I'll always put most of them on Yancey because they're companies of student support projects. Yancey built something called an Ark over there. That's where the students go play in that big gym. Has a big pool in it. Well, it costs about $17 million of bonded money to pay for it. We have dedicated revenue streams to pay for every bit of the capital program here, which is a huge indicator. When Saks comes in to look at us, it's one of the things they'll look at, making sure we're not leveraged, the budget's not constrained by having to pay for your capital program. We'll add another $28 million in this year, Tyler. I think we'll do that for the new parking deck that we built with the West Campus housing will come in, and we have revenue to take care of that as well. Physical plant square footage is another indicator of financial health for the campus. If you can see, from 2014 to 2018, we have gained about 1 million new square feet of space. You said, where'd you get that? State office building, you remember those properties, the MAP building? We took on those properties as well. We're in the process of renovating all of those. But every time we get an opportunity to do infill, we kind of get that land or take that property to make sure it can meet our growth capacity. We are slated to grow under the current master plan for the university to 15,000 students. Building enough capital square footage to accommodate that growth is really essential. So this year we have a great project planned. The old Lupton Library is being reinvested and reimagined into a new classroom building. which we think will be great for our growth as we move forward.
Richard, can I ask where in the planning we are in that project?
Gosh, the project we're getting ready to, in fact, we have bid the project. We're under bid, right? At the end of the day, we should be under construction sometime this summer. So we bid that project, it did come in under bid. We were able to get in all the alternates in it. We were just stunned at the end of the day, so we're extremely happy.
Background, how many years ago was that first proposed to the UC Foundation?
What's this?
It looked at library renovation.
Oh, about 6 or 7.
Not 7, because this was
No,
my
it was
6th
it-
year, and
It preceded Dr. Angle.
Butch Peccolo was there,
Yeah.
but, I think it was 2014, maybe 2015, 2014.
But I think his question is when it was first kind of idealized.
When it was presented to the foundation, and we committed, at that time, it was gonna be 1/4 or 1/3 of the cost.
Oh, yeah, that was 2014. Yeah, when we first talked about foundation support. That's state planning for you.
Yeah, I think it could have been done a lot cheaper 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah, that's right, time, value of money. You're exactly right. Here's something I want to talk a little bit about, and Mr. Constable is there. He's been with our foundation for a long time. If you look at this wall, and you're in the foundation room. And I've been here at the university for about 30 years, so I have known a lot of these folks. Great volunteers, great supporters of this institution, right? We have a competitive position that exceeds most public universities our size, and it's simply because of this UC Foundation. I will tell you, I call it, when you talk about secret sauce in a budget, it is our secret sauce. It is our really measure of competitiveness, our ability to provide excellence here at this university. We have a foundation here that has a total endowment value of about 141 million, right? There's not many public small universities that has that kind of asset working for them. As a result of that, here's some of the ways that they invest this money. Unrestricted support of about 48 million. They put about 31 million in scholarships, academic support 44 million, professorships 15 million, and even faculty development. When the faculty sometimes want to do professional development and sabbaticals, they help with that. And even temporary funds of about $10 million. This is the true margin of excellence for this university. If Chancellor Engel wants to stand up a new program and needs some funding in the interim to do it, he can look to this foundation to help him do that. It's really a good, flexible budget leveraging position for the university. When you look at their spend out in their planned distribution for this year, take a look at the value that they add back into UTC. They'll put 1.9 million in unrestricted institutional support. That simply means that the chancellor and his team gets to work with the foundation to say, how you gonna spend that $1.9 million? Pretty strong stuff. Not many public universities have that. They'll put 1.1 million, almost 1.2 in scholarships. Another 1.3 in academic programs, $500,000 in professorships, again about 27,000 faculty development, $5 million they will invest back into the university. And I guarantee you there's not many guys like me around the country are able to say that they have that kind of flexibility. So it does give us a little bit of chest thumping when you have a foundation that's working for you like that, along with the fact that they too own our South Campus housing. And when you look at the growth of the university, we began to grow exponentially when we built the South Campus. It really did project us to really grow, and growth brings about revenue at the end of the day. So I do want to pause to let the board understand how this foundation works. Fred, did I do okay?
I'll pay you later.
Pretty important work. In terms of our planning update for 1921, we're right in the middle of that process right now. The budget and planning process starts early here. The chancellor's kind of pushed us off center saying, hey, start it earlier. We started in October of 2018. to begin the budget planning process that we will present to you shortly in terms of the 1920 budget. We've had department and unit requests in November. Division leaders finalized their budget in December. In January through March, we put up something called the Interim Budget Advisory Council. That's pretty much the vice chancellors and the deans sitting around the table looking at priorities, right? We came back with recommendations to the executive leadership team, and we prioritized how we look at new investments for this year. We put together a group called UPRAC. I always say it sounds like a disease that needs an antibiotic. I know Carol would like that, you know. But UPRAC is the University Planning and a Budget and Advisory Committee. It sits there. It's a broad shared governance representation around the university that sits and looks at the budget, and it's very transparent. Every dollar that we get in, we try to help people understand where the money comes from, how we're going to expense out that money, where will new investments go. Pretty important stuff. So we're right through that process as well. In April, the executive leadership team, we have already been there. We have finalized the proposed numbers, working with the chancellor and the leadership team. And what's the date for the UPRAC? 28th, I believe?
Yes.
April the 28th, Chancellor Engel will stand up in a town hall meeting of the entire campus, go over that entire process and say, here's what we recommend for investments going forward in 19 and 20. Been a strong, strong process, and I can say that every vice chancellor sitting around the table was touched with some new investment, priority investment. We couldn't do everything we needed to do, but we touched just about all the important things here. And then, again, we will get that budget to you, the advisory board, in May, early in May, and you will make recommendations on the proposed UTC budget, which will go to the UT Board of Trustees in late June of 2019. As other campuses will bring in their budgets in 2019, and it's completed there at the UT Board. That's where the process ends. One last slide here on the governor's budget. I would like to say this is a new governor. We're excited about having Governor Lee at the table. We think that he is going to be a strong proponent and supporter of higher education and education in general in the state. Formula funding, again, generated $2.4 million for us this year, including a partial funding, get that word partial now, of the 2% pool, salary pool. This year, the president asked for some money to be allocated to make the campus safer. He learned that a couple of years ago, the TBR institutions got about $10 million from the state to put in all kind of lights and locks and cameras, just in case you had an active shooter on your campus, to make the campus safe. And President Boyd said, why not UT? And the governor agreed, and TEC agreed. So there's a $10 million allocation that UTC will get a prorated share of that we can invest in campus safety systems. We're excited about that. We've been doing some things already. This will put us over the top in terms of making this campus secure. $6.1 million for capital maintenance, East Campus utility expansion over by the Challenger Center. The beauty about that project is that it brings our central energy plant to the east side of the campus. We stub out there, and we're waiting on the chancellor to get us that new health sciences building. So by the time he gets that funded, the utilities will be sitting there ready to connect in. Pretty good stuff. You sure?
I was getting excited about the health science building.
Oh, okay. That's it. Questions?
Thank you, Rich. Any questions?
We'd like to say our financial position is strong. Our reserves are strong, our budgets are balanced. I want to thank Tyler and the budget office for his work, and thank all the vice chancellors who have been good stewards of their budget, right? And I can say that because quarterly, we look inside their tent to make sure that they're spending their money correctly.
Richard, just one quick question. I know Yancey had armed me with some information about 90% of our incoming freshmen receive HOPE money. When's the last time that was increased? And what do we anticipate?
I don't anticipate any increases. We'd love for them to increase it. I will tell you that, and I think Jansen will tell you that as well. We'd love to see that increase.
Yeah, I think it's around 3,000 currently,
3,500.
3,500.
We actually had a little bit of a decrease when they did the
Promise.
Tennessee Promise.
2015,
When they
so
did
they
Promise.
reduced it.
But
They
they
reduced it in the
increased
first
the
and second.
junior and senior year.
They did, right.
Right.
Averaged the same, but because of student attrition, they paid 3,500 instead of 4,000 for
Yeah, they
the
also said-
freshman, sophomore, junior, senior was all 4,000. Now it's 3,500, 3,500, 45, 45.
Right.
And there's also Hope Need and Hope Merit on top of that, right?
That's right, that's right. For students who have, I think it's less than a $40,000 AGI, they can receive an additional $1,000 or it's $1,500. And then for students who have above a 3.5 and a 29 ACT score, they can get some additional Hope Merit dollars. I think it's $1,500 or $1,000 additional money.
Is that only based on high school, or if when you get to college you perform better, is it possible to earn?
Yeah, it is. So with the need one, you can get that when you're here.
Mhm.
With the merit, because it's based on high school test scores, you cannot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scott,
I
you
thought
want,
I had read something about a proposed increase, I didn't know.
you want to buy more lottery tickets?
I know.
You can fund it yourself.
My return on that dollar hasn't been great.
So with the state, you know, tuition going up, the state going down, what did the state do with those funds? Instead of,
Split it on 10 care.
Yeah, 10 care was a big deal.
Yeah.
And K through 12. Many of the public school districts have sued the state based on equalized funding for the school district. So K through 12 has been a big deal. There are 5 priority things around the state before they get to higher ed that are statutory requirements. Bear in mind, every dollar sent to higher education is a discretionary dollar. That's why we have to always maintain our value proposition. We always want to say we are graduating kids, adding to the workforce, adding to Drive to 55. We're a quality campus, and without us, you would be a different state. So those are the value propositions we drive.
I think a lot of the money went also to the rural schools based on the formula that.
PEP.
Discriminated, yeah.
Well, the next meeting is May 14th, and we will get the budget information out well in advance there. If people have questions, I mean, you know, Richard and Tyler deal with this all the time. I've been here now almost 6 years, and I still have questions that I am embarrassed to ask sometimes. But if you're wondering, you're going to be asked to make a recommendation that will go to the UT Board of Trustees. So if you have questions about the budget, why do you break it out this way? I don't understand. We can have those kind of discussions ahead of the meeting so that when you come in for the meeting, you can make the most of the time. So I think we ought to offer to schedule those with people if you'd like, so that we
Love to
can
do
make
it.
sure people know.
Yeah. Al and I, we'd love to do it. We'd love to have anyone come see us.
We were told how big of an increase in tuitions we could have. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
2.5% is the max
Okay.
coming out of TDEC, and we'd like the 2.5. That's what we're recommending.
Because we did 0
Yeah,
last
I-
year,
Yeah.
the 2.5 actually positioned us pretty well with the budget. That's what we constructed our budget. The numbers that I showed you and Dr. Brown did all have that 2.5% as part of it.
Yes. We think that's very reasonable in regards to where we are.
And we will strive to stay at or below the higher education inflation index, the HEPI rate. That's what we've been doing the last 3 years, 4 years.
Yes.
And trying to hold at there to create opportunities for strategic investment by reducing our budget and reinvesting the funds that we can pull back. But staying with inflation, because there's cost of doing business that we just don't have any control over, what vendors are charging. The state decides on the salary raises. It was good for us this year that it was 2%, not 2.5%.
Yes.
Our staff may not feel that way, but in terms of making the budget numbers work, it all flowed together pretty well with that.
What increase over inflation does HEPA usually run as a percentage?
It ranges anywhere from 1% to 3% in that range. What the heck, it's been hovering right around.
I know it runs more than
Well, it's
inflation.
about a percentage point, really.
Okay, I know, but
Right.
we're trying to figure out how much the foundation needs to earn just to stay even.
Yeah.
That's
That's kind of where it's been hovering.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions?
He
Thank
knows
you
where
for
the
your
bodies are
attention,
buried.
not glazing over on me. I think.
Dr. Brown knows where the bodies are buried.
Some of them.
Thank you. Now, we could stay till 11 o'clock if anybody wants to, but any other business that we need to address? For the 4th or 5th time, we got to meet May the 14th. It'll be from 1 to 3. We'll make some closing remarks.
If you have questions, please ask. We appreciate you being a part of our board. To get everything in with the deadlines for the Board of Trustee materials, May the 14th was the date that worked. We had looked at a date later in May, right before Memorial Day weekend, and that just seemed like a mistake to have people come. So if there are problems with the 14th, let us know. Mickey Barker could come. You know, he's on vacation that they had planned long ago for today, and that's why he's not here. But if the May the 14th doesn't work, let us know. But that was a date that worked with all the submissions that we have to make to the UT system for their meeting and like June the 20th, I think. So thank you for service and for being here early today also.
May I have a motion to adjourn? May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.